And hello and welcome back to the Capture the World podcast. This is our third episode.
Yep, third episode. We had some scheduling complications getting a real guest, so I'm going to be acting as the guest per Leaf's request. So after he talks a bit about why he started the podcast, why I'm here at all, and wow, just lost my train of thought completely, and all that, then he will be interviewing me about my experience with photography and stuff like that. It's going to be super cool. Stick around.
Yeah, got a lot of fun content today.
Hopefully. I have no idea what he's going to ask me, except that it's about photography, so this should be interesting.
All right, so to get started, I want to talk about why I started this podcast. And I guess the simple answer is I kind of like exploring and I like finding out new stuff. And so this is a way to interview people and to discuss stuff where I can talk to people from all around the world, all walks of life, and be able to explore, learn something new, and hopefully have the people at home learn something new. And that's why I started it. And then I asked Noah on because, well, we've been, I don't know, friends for a decade now.
Basically.
Yeah.
I think a little over a decade, if anything.
Yeah. We run a YouTube channel together. And it was interesting to get the views of somebody who is in the creative space, because that's where I am, where Noah is. We are very heavily invested into the creative space.
Definitely.
And it just gives a interesting viewpoint on a lot of stuff if you have an artsy background when you go into an interview.
And Leaf and I actually have very different perspectives, even though we're both in like the creative production space. Mm-hmm. It's kind of surprising how different we view things and look at things. So two different perspectives, our dynamic as good friends.
We're look at the difference between our YouTube channels. I'm running a podcast. You have a YouTube channel doing tech and all sorts of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Instructional content on anything cameras. That's the name of the channel, Anything Cameras. Leaf is the co-host of that, so we kind of alternate. It's not a strict alternating schedule, but we kind of alternate episodes, and he talks more about the video side of things. I talk more about the photo sides of things. So it's super cool.
Yeah, no, and I think having a podcast where you're all about exploring, it's important to have somebody who I think who likes art, because what better form of exploration is art? I'm thinking, like, you're trying something new, doing something different every day, trying to learn, develop the skill. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I started it, and that's why I have Noah on here on the podcast. But now that we've gotten why I've started this out of the way, let's move into the interview. And I want to randomly generate a word again.
Okay, let's see how this goes.
Hey Google, random word generator. I can't spell, so
hopefully we don't have to generate a word more than once, but if we get some kind of weird adjective like sloshy, how are we gonna do a sloshy mood? For those who aren't aware, if this is your first time joining, Leaf had the idea, and this is only our second episode trying it, of each interview generating a word to set the mood of the interview. So last week it was cultured, and we were talking about stage production, like ballet, modern dance, musical theater, and cultured couldn't have been a more perfect random word that was generated for that interview.
Oh yeah.
But what do you have today, Leaf?
So I have well-groomed.
Well-groomed?
It's a hyphenated word.
Yeah, but groomed, that's like a physical.
Here, let me do it again.
Let's do a different one.
Neat.
Okay. I think we can make that work.
N-E-A-T.
N-E-A-T, so like concise and organized.
Okay, actually, that is a perfect word for you.
Generally, yeah. Sometimes, if I'm a little busy, can't take the time to be neat. But otherwise, I like to be organized. I have so many Word documents and notes and what's the word? Spreadsheets. That's the word.
He is the king of spreadsheets. Like All right.
I don't know about the king. Anyway, get to the questions, please.
Yes.
I'm
So
excited to answer.
how did you get into photography? What pushed you into that?
So I, like some of my other hobbies, such as juggling, I stumbled upon photography, and I think you remember this story, Leaf, by accident. So at the time, this was late winter of 2016. I was doing a YouTube channel. That channel still exists. I don't think the videos are on it. They were bad. Let's just say they were bad. I'll leave it at that for now. Anyway, I had been using this old hand-me-down point-and-shoot camera that recorded, I think it was 480p video. I decided that I was having so much fun with this channel that I wanted to save up and get a new camera that would serve me better for YouTube, to make these videos and express myself. And so that's what I did. And by January of 2017, I had saved up enough for a Lumix GF2. This was a mirrorless Micro Four Thirds Lumix interchangeable lens camera from 2011.
Yeah, 11.
I think it was 2011. It might have been 2009 or 2012. One of those years, a little bit jumbled. Anyway, it recorded 1080i video at most. But it was a huge upgrade from what I was using. And so I used it for video. But I also saw its photo feature and kind of just started taking photos. And found, hey, I really enjoy taking these photos, and I feel like I have a pretty good eye for photography. So from then on, I just started learning everything I could about photography, using cameras. And about a year later is when I started anything cameras. Back then, it was 60-second shutter speed. And felt that I had enough knowledge, which I did, to start educating people on the basics.
Yeah, and I remember filming the initial intro to that.
Yeah, that was interesting. That's probably still on our channel somewhere, I'm not sure, but if you go to the very oldest video, you might just see the weird idea I had for an intro, and anyway, it was strange,
yeah,
to say the least.
So you kind of got into photography thanks to YouTube.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like it's the other way around for most people. They get into YouTube because of photography. Like, they enjoy cameras and then they want to share
or
about
they
that.
just want to specifically get into photography or YouTube.
Yeah, like for me, I wanted to get into YouTube, and I mean, I enjoy photography, but it's not something that I do all the time.
Right.
So I know many people would want to know your gear. So talk a little bit about your progression, where you started with gear and where you are currently with your gear.
Yeah, in that 3 and a little bit year time span, I've had 3 different cameras. So, start of the first year, it started out with that Lumix GF2, and the lens I was using, I got it used from a friend. It was $30. It was actually an Olympus kit lens. It was probably older than the camera itself. And it worked. It wasn't great. It zoomed. It was a standard zoom range. And so, especially for YouTube purposes, it was fine. Of course, video autofocus and photo autofocus on that camera was completely awful, basically unusable. Anyway, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Eventually, I accidentally broke that lens because it was a stupid design, actually, but I got this lens hood for it.
Yeah.
Because I thought it looked cool. But the thing is that lens didn't actually accept a lens hood. So what third-party manufacturers did is they had this...
Screw mount?
It was a screw mount, yeah. So they had the screw plate that screwed onto the front of the lens like a filter would, such as a polarizing filter.
Yeah.
And then the lens hood just clicked onto that. However, I tried to take it off one time because it was a little bit bulky, and I had screwed on that screw plate too tightly. And the way that the lens zoomed or focused meant that as I tried to unscrew it, the whole front 3 elements in their barrel actually screwed out of the lens, and I couldn't put them back in because it was just a design flaw of the lens. It wasn't meant to have a screw plate like that screwed on so tightly. So then I invested in a
5mm.
It was a 27 millimeter, actually. Kind of a weird focal length, but 27 millimeters, f 1.7, if I'm not mistaken. And that was about a year later, a little bit under maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the lens I started 60-second shutter speed with.
Mm-hmm.
And that lens, I was blown away by its quality. It cost me probably $125, but it was so much sharper. It focused faster, and was just way nicer than my previous lens.
I remember getting that and filming in this room with that lens.
So then, less than a year after that, actually probably only a couple months, I decided that I want to save up for a better camera because this one just wasn't cutting it. And it took me a long time to save up the $700 it took. But around September of 2018, I believe, I had about $700 and bought a used Canon ATD off of eBay with a kit lens. And again, that was a huge upgrade. I loved that camera, still really enjoy it, and have it and use it as a B camera occasionally. And I had a variety of lenses for that. I started out with the 18-55 kit lens. I got a nifty 50. I also had an old 55-250 millimeter lens, and yes, the Sigma. It's an older Sigma lens. It's a 17-50 f2.8.
Yeah.
Not a bad lens, considering I bought it used for only $250.
I remember when you got that. I was so blown away by how sharp that thing was.
Well, yeah, it's way sharper and a faster aperture than what I was using previously, which was just the kit lens.
Yeah.
But as I progressed in my professional applications of photography, I started to be hindered by this camera and lens. But in particular, there were some things about the camera that I was hindered by. So I decided it was time to save up again for another camera. And this was probably around July of 2019 that I decided I would be saving up for another one. But it wasn't until it wasn't until February or March of this year. I think it was March that I ended up having the roughly $3,000 that it took to buy my latest camera and lens, which is the Sony a7R III. I bought that used off of Adorama for about $2,200, a little more than, and also the Samyang 85 f1.4, which cost me about $700.
Yeah.
And right now, I love this setup. It's absolutely amazing, and it is such a joy to use this professional equipment. And though I haven't yet been able to use it in a professional application because of the lockdown, I have done photo shoots like with your sister Leaf.
Yeah.
As practice, and I just love it. Absolutely love it. It's awesome.
Okay, so you know this is your progression of gear, and you mentioned how your other cameras just wouldn't allow you to progress. And so when I buy gear, that's exactly what I say to myself. I ask myself, can I progress with this camera, with this lens, with what I want to do? And, you know, is that something you would say to everybody, you know, only buy a new piece of gear if you need that to progress?
Generally, I think that I would, but it would also depend on the person's use case and their budget and their willingness to invest in expensive gear. And so when I give people recommendations for cameras, I ask them about all those things. What do you want to use it for? How invested are you in investing? How much money do you have to spend?
Yeah.
And what is your final goal with photography or video? What are you trying to accomplish here? and that will allow me to give them a recommendation of camera after a little bit of researching.
Yeah, because if I come in and I say my budget's $4,000, I say I'm heavily invested. My goal is to get a business up and going in the next year. Then I guess what camera would you suggest for me then?
For video, probably a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera or a Lumix S1
Yeah. Okay.
And for photography, probably a Sony A7R3 or A7R4.
Yeah.
Or even an A9 or A9 II.
See, guys, this guy knows his stuff. He knows his cameras. That's an interesting point there. How much are you going to invest in this? Like, it's not just money investment,
right?
But it's time
to learn,
yeah,
to use the gear, and to actually shoot with it, whether it's professional or casual.
Like, you've invested days, weeks, months of your life, into years into this endeavor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Eat, sleep, and breathe camera. So now I know I do a lot of video, and well, same with you. You do a lot of video, but what is a big difference that you see between the video realm and the photography realm? Something that really sets them apart.
That's a very interesting question, because nowadays, with the current technology, not nearly as much sets these cameras apart. It used to be that you had a specific film camera that only shot stills, and then a specific video camera that you also used film that only shot video, because you just couldn't merge the two. But here comes the digital realm, and suddenly we have the capability to do it efficiently, and now you buy any decent photo camera, and it's going to come with really decent or very good video capabilities as well. So definitely a lot less sets them apart. But as I mentioned, I recommended two completely different things. Whether you, in that example of fake camera recommendations, whether you wanted to do it for photo or for video. And I think mainly what sets those cameras apart, aside from being specifically geared more towards photo or video, is, like, hardware-wise, the sensors. Because generally with photo cameras, you're going to have higher megapixel cameras, say 43 megapixels like my Sony, or 24 megapixels is even considered pretty high megapixels. Whereas in video, for lots of various reasons, you're going to generally see lower megapixels in those sensors, and that will increase noise performance, it will increase sharpness of the video, believe it or not, among other things. And then just the processing capabilities of the cameras, generally you will see a pretty big difference between the photo capabilities and video capabilities, what am I trying to say here? If they aren't meant to be very balanced. Maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't.
No, I get you.
Hopefully all you guys do listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done tons of photography, but I do agree with you there. And then I think if you're to look at it with tech outside the, like, with not including any of the technology that these about photography or video, I see one difference in how you capture. Because video, you have like millions of photos.
Right.
And with photography, you have one photo. So photography, your goal is to capture as much as you possibly can in that one still, like capture the moment, whatever that is. So I almost find it helpful for me to help my framing in video is to actually take photos and think, does this actually capture the mood? Does it give this image justice? You know, the scene. And so I feel like it is almost harder to frame a photo when you are thinking that way. Like you want to capture as much as you can in in, well, what is it, 40 million pixels in your camera.
43.2 million pixels or something like that. Maybe it's 41.2.
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember right now.
And that can be very hard and
Yeah,
limiting.
definitely.
And
Like,
so,
that's a lot of pixels, but pixels aren't everything.
yep.
Pixels don't make a good photographer a good photographer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now, as a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
what's your favorite platform to share on?
I generally don't share my photography that often, actually. But either Facebook or Instagram. The only reason I would consider Facebook is because it's a far better place to reach clients who are looking for photographers in the area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Instagram, as it's specifically geared towards sharing photos, is generally a little bit better in many ways.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've run into that with video even too. Like, if I wanted to gain a client base, Facebook is very good.
Yeah.
But then instead of going to Instagram, I go to YouTube and share my videos, which is not going to get you clients really.
No.
Because you don't. There's not that one-on-one communication. Yeah. So how that leads nicely into my next question. How do you get your clients? Like, what's your main avenue to get new clients?
Right now, it's referrals. As with any photographer, even if they've been trying to do business for a few years, as I have, a lot of your clients, whether they're paid or free, are going to be friends and friends of friends. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to get the word out somehow, and you have to practice and collect a portfolio somehow. So if you are, as a listener, starting a photography business or have a photography business, don't be discouraged by that. It's going to happen. But that's not to say I haven't had many paid shoots. I've shot a wedding for a friend. I've shot a number of professional theater productions for connections, as well as portrait sessions, several portrait sessions, which is what I mainly focus on. And I have had a few people who I didn't know as clients, and they discovered me through Facebook or my website, and they saw that I was offering affordable shoots and decent quality, though at the time it wasn't great, the quality anyway. And other than that, those few people, just friends of friends and friends.
Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know if anybody knew this, but I did give a push into the video realm, and actually doing that as a business. I know you know that, but I found it exactly the same. Like, I didn't have any clients that weren't friends.
Yeah.
And so, guys, I shot a video of cows. I did a beef farm advertisement. Anyhow, people shouldn't be discouraged for just shooting their. I'm not gonna say that. Taking pictures or taking videos of their friends, relatives, whoever it is. You are gaining experience. You are.
Building a portfolio.
Yeah.
That will, if you do a good job, and if they are pleased with you and your work, you'll get referrals.
I got a referral to another cow farm, but I had to turn it down since it was a little bit too far away. But one cow farm to the next. But I feel like people immediately jump. Oh, okay. I feel like people immediately jump to the getting clients that they have no idea, big shoots, whatever.
Yeah.
And having that mentality that that you should just be shooting these big professional shoots and not shooting relatives, friends, that's kind of destructive to your business.
Definitely.
It's very important to start out like that because if you are taking photos and videos of relatives, it's not as bad if you screw up. You know, if you mess it up utterly, there's going to be a little more forgiveness there.
Definitely.
So, but then if you go and you're filming for a company and they need this video or these photos out by a certain time on this deadline, and they need them to look the way, way they want them. Yeah. And you screw up,
you're in trouble.
You're in big trouble. You just lost all your money for that shoot. You just broke the contract, all sorts of problems there. Yeah.
I've yet to screw up a shoot that badly. Of course, some of my early shoots, they just weren't great photos, and some of my other ones I made slight mistakes, but nothing that I wasn't able to fix. Nothing detrimental, which I think that I've been kind of fortunate about, because I've done several paid shoots. I've made several $100s, more than actually, off of photography. But so far I have yet to make a detrimental mistake, which is kind of mind-blowing. I thought I would have some kind of big failure, but I've yet to see that day.
Well, I mean, if you work so hard on making sure that your craft is honed, then you probably will never have a big mistake. I mean, it's basic stuff like checking you have SD cards.
Right. Generally, it's basic stuff.
Batteries, that sort of stuff. And, okay, is there one thing that, besides, like, the essentials to take a photo, is there one thing that you will always carry around with you with your camera? Something that isn't essential, but that you like to carry around.
Isn't essential. Something that I like to carry around. Aside from backup batteries and SD cards, I carry around backup lots of things. I can't really think of anything. The closest thing that I can think of is a reflector, which generally I would consider essential. I can get great photos no matter the lighting, as long as there is light. But reflectors, I love to use them to modify the light to have a little bit more flexibility in the lighting.
Yeah. Well, the reflector, for any of you guys who don't know and want to explore reflector and actually anything else we've been talking about on this channel, if you're interested in photography at all, he has a channel devoted to teaching you, we have a channel devoted to teaching you photography and getting into it and video. So
everything from the basics to more advanced things like chroma subsampling, chromatic aberration, bit depth, all those nerdy terms that you can wow your friends with.
Yeah. So this stuff doesn't have to be foreign to you, if you're finding that it's a little foreign. So I know, one thing I carry around in my bag that's not essential is a mini flashlight.
Oh.
So now my mini flashlight is for lens cleaning. I know you can clean a lens without a mini flashlight, but I like to shine it on the element. And it's one of those dumb things that I get super pissed off when I lose. I'm like, where's my flashlight? It cost me $2 at Dollar General. Actually, no, I got a really good one. It's a $30 Swiss.
Oh my word.
I got it from a present from somebody. I don't know. But anyhow.
Yeah, and for those wondering, you don't actually clean the lens with the flashlight. You shine it on the optic to see the imperfections that you can then clean off.
Yes. No, I'm not just scraping my lens.
Yeah, it's definitely handy. Generally, I'll just hold the lens so that it reflects whatever light there is, and that will show me the imperfections, but either technique works.
Yeah. Okay. So, with lenses. Yeah. I know when I first got into photography, I had no idea how delicate lenses were or how undelicate they were, how to clean them, the procedures to cleaning a sensor, like the maintenance aspect. Yeah. I had no idea, and it took me forever to learn. How was your experience learning maintenance?
Honestly, I don't really remember. One thing that I remember very specifically before I knew anything about it, when I first got that Lumix camera, was that I directly cleaned the sensor with a microfiber cloth, which, for the record, you never do. It was fine somehow, but yeah, I did not know that. And then once I learned that, I was like, oh crap, I'm glad that I'm not noticing any quality.
Did your red
things.
filter disappear?
Nope. Which I'm kind of surprised about. But yeah, that's kind of the only story I have regarding maintenance. I learned pretty soon after that how to do it properly, lenses and sensors.
Yeah. No, I feel like everybody I've met is scared, like new photographers, new videographers, they're scared to clean their lenses because they don't know, that it's fragile, but you don't know its limits. Any tips for somebody who is a little bit nervous about touching the lens with anything?
Don't be forceful, but don't be afraid to touch it with something clean. Microfiber cloths. Zooming around on that thing. Oh my gosh, it looks so much better. Cut. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, don't be forceful, but don't be afraid to touch the lens with something soft, clean, that isn't going to scrape it. So, microfiber cloths, whether they're used or new, I still have a couple that aren't completely oily and dusty from 2 years ago that I'll use to wipe off the lens.
Yeah.
As long as you're not forceful, you don't use anything that'll scratch it. Lenses, especially decent ones, are surprisingly durable and will almost never shatter.
Yeah.
The first thing to go usually will be the lens mount, if anything, and you had this happen to you recently. His camera fell off a windowsill and hit the lens, and so the back lens mount actually popped off a little bit, so he has to send that in for repair once the lockdown is over.
Yeah, but with that lens, it has face planted. Granted, I've had a cap on it or a hood, and it's face planted.
Been fine,
like on concrete from 5 feet up.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If you keep a lens cap on it and a lens hood, the lens cap whenever you're not using it, lens hood at all times, basically, then you should be fine. You shouldn't break any gear.
Yeah. So now, going back to your photography, what's your favorite thing to shoot? Like, what is the thing that you love shooting?
People. I love people. I'm very awkward around people, but I love people. I love being around them. And for some reason, I just like shooting them too. There's a great joke. It goes, photographers are the only people who can shoot families, frame couples, capture children, and...
Get away with it?
No, there's one other thing. And then it just get away with it. I need to look it up again because it's very amusing. I just can't tell it well.
I feel so dumb when I'm talking about photography. I'm like, yeah, so I was out shooting some squirrels yesterday, and people are like, huh? I'm not that hick. I'm not that country. No, you just have to get used to that terminology. Yeah, people are interesting subjects because they move, they're all different.
Yeah.
I find them fascinating too.
It's hard to shoot them. You need to know how to pose them.
Oh yeah.
You need to know how to talk to them, how to instruct them. And I'm still learning how to do that.
Especially with the young children.
Oh, well, actually, no. The young children I find the easiest. I love working with the little ones. One story, I was doing this for a company. I was doing these photo shoots. So I brought my studio equipment to their building, and their students, some of their students had the option. It was like $10 for 20 or 30-minute shoot. And anyway, there were lots of little kids. And one of the kids was on the autistic spectrum. And so she was super nervous. She was melting down, and her mom was trying to calm her down, which was working somewhat. But eventually, I stepped in and I showed her pictures of the other kids that I had shot. I got one of my lights with a color filter. She liked pink, so I put a pink filter on it, shown on the background, and eventually she calmed down, and she somewhat enjoyed being in front of the camera, even though it terrified her completely. So yeah, little kids, I love working with little kids. They're really great to work with, in my opinion. and much easier to pose. I find that older kids and adults are much harder to pose. I'm still learning how to pose them, but the little kids just kind of do what they do, and it kind of just works because that's who they are, and they aren't nervous about how they look on camera. If they're nervous about being in front of camera, it's generally for other reasons. But they just kind of do their thing. If you give them like a prop, like a toy to play with, they're going to play with that toy. You're capturing who they are in portrait photos and playing with that toy. Maybe that's who they are. Maybe that's like what doing. If it's a little bit of an older kid, giving them a book, actually having them read, it can actually be really, it can produce really nice photos and capture who they are. So little tricks like that, I find children much easier to pose.
Try capturing a picture of Tori when she's not dancing. Ha! I mentioned your name again. I know she sent me a message last time as it was coming out live. It was just premiering. She's like, I heard my name.
I was here when it happened. It was
yeah. Anyhow. I guess I never really thought about that. Having people do what pose in some way where they're doing something that they enjoy.
That they normally do. That's the thing.
That is, I never thought about
that. That's like, for instance, one of the other dancers at the studio, I gave her a portrait session. I don't even know if I'd started my business by that point. But honestly, she was kind of difficult to pose. A little bit camera shy, you know who I'm talking about. But when she came to the studio to do the dance shoots, like I was talking about earlier, those half-hour shoots, they cost $10. It was much easier because she was dancing, which is what she loves doing. Same with Tori.
Yeah.
Whereas with someone like Kate, if they just want a portrait shoot, that's not generally who she is. She generally will, for photos, will pose with, or maybe not pose, but it'll be photos of her doing weightlifting or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's what she does.
Her natural element is the gym, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a episode on fitness coming up here soon. So if you want to see us dive into that realm, definitely stick around. But yeah, I've never thought about that. That is interesting to think, and I'm definitely going to utilize that when I do photos.
You're welcome.
Yeah. You know, we can still find out new stuff about each other. Like, he didn't know I was into classic cars until, like, I don't know, a month ago. 2 months ago.
I knew you were.
I guess, yeah.
I didn't know you how into them you were.
Yeah, until I almost bought one.
But you used to be obsessed with cars and bikes.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that phase.
No, I had a phase of actually racing bikes. And then I was like, you know what? That's too hard. I don't like going 30 miles on a bike. I'm done. Yeah. No, well, I guess we're kind of wandering from our topic here.
A little bit.
So
we never did neat. That was,
neat.
We haven't been very neat.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that describes as you've been talking, you're a very, you're very organized.
Thank you. When I think a lot about what I talk, that was a sentence. When I think a lot about what I am talking about and how I am speaking about it, then I'm generally much slower and more organized. But as you know, when I'm just saying whatever comes out of my mouth, well, of course I'm saying whatever comes out of my mouth. See, now I can't talk. When I'm just saying whatever comes to mind, basically, it's usually very fast and doesn't always make a lot of sense. I really need to think about what I'm saying.
That's all something we could work on, thinking about what we speak before we say it. Yeah, so neat, organized. You mentioned how you like to make your files neat on your computer.
Yeah.
How does that tie into photography?
Well, obviously I have a lot of photos. I probably I don't think I said that word correctly.
You said probably.
I probably have at least 400 gigabytes of photos on my computer. which doesn't seem like that much, especially for someone who does video. But photos don't take up that much space, so that's many thousand photos. And a lot of those, probably around 200 gigabytes, are client photos. So in the pictures folder of my computer, I have photography and other. In the photography folder, I have professional and personal. Under the professional folder, I have all the years. Then in that folder, one of those folders, like 2019, I have all the months, and then each client shoot I did in that month.
Oh no, that's interesting.
And then I have that labeled with the client's name, the date I did it, the kind of photos they were, and I feel like there's something else, but it's not coming to mind right now. So then in the personal one, I have a similar thing. All the different years, all the different months, and then I just have the photos in there titled about what they are, what the subject is, so that I can then search in there and find various photos. And then one other folder I forgot to mention, in the same folder that personal and client is in, is website photos. So I think it's just titled website photos. And then in there are various websites, because I've also made websites for several people. There's my website, and in there are all these different photos. So very extensive, very organized. And then, of course, I have all these different Word documents, notes, and spreadsheets for other various aspects of photography. So I have a form for clients that they'll fill out that'll tell me what kind of photos they want, where, when, etc.
Yeah. Okay. That there are some similarities to my file organization system, but I go. I have a clients folder. Then I have each individual client, and they each have a folder. And within their individual folder, I label each project I've done with them. So it's kind of going reverse, taking your organization, going reverse. Anyhow, this is not a file organization podcast. Would you say your photos are neat?
Yeah, I think so. Generally, it also depends on what I'm shooting, but generally, I will focus in my photos physically and like feel of the photo wise on one specific thing. So for instance, if I'm doing portraits, it's all about the subject, maybe what they're doing or holding or whatever. Actually, usually about what they're doing or who they are. But it's all about them in the photo, which is kind of concise.
Yeah, and
picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah,
I think that's how the saying goes.
Yep. Because I know, with me, if you look at my photography, it's not neat.
No,
I wouldn't call it neat. It's busy.
Yeah, we actually did. We recorded an episode that we never ended up posting about getting into creative production and style, and so then we got into my style versus Leaf style. Maybe we'll do that kind of over again at some point with a guest.
And if you want to hear this initial recording attempt, it's half hour of audio.
A little more than, right?
Yeah, a little more than. Just click on that Patreon link down below and sign up, because you'll get exclusive content.
Yeah.
And
guys, it supports us, the podcast.
I want to keep this without sponsors, so we don't have to have any interruptions by, this company is selling us. Yeah. All right. That actually went right into my next question. Do you prefer working for individuals or companies? Or do you see a difference there?
I know there is a difference. I have heard from other people that there is a difference. However, the companies I've shot for, I've always worked directly with the manager of the company, or the person who's organizing the event or whatever. And therefore, it was much more of a one-on-one personal experience than a big company looking for advertisement photos.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I really have a preference, just because of my experience there. However, I imagine that if I ever do start working for like big companies where it's much less personal, then I will enjoy working more with individuals and small businesses.
Like, you could be working with somebody who is not even head of the PR department. You could be working with a co-PR, like all sorts of...
Or multiple people.
Yeah, multiple. Like, you could be...
And that gets confusing.
I was touring a business up in Rochester, a company. They do new media stuff.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how they get in contact with people and how sometimes there's some mix-up because head of PR wants this done, but then there's somebody else in another department who's like, no, we need it this way, and they tell the person doing the work, this freelance guy doing the work, two different things, and they don't communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And this another freelance guy is like, well, I can do both, but I'm going to charge you twice, or, and I feel like I'd hate that if I was working with a big company.
It can get confusing from what I hear.
Yeah.
Because I've watched so many different photography courses, still do, really, and tutorials and all that, and listen to photographers' experiences. And some of these big commercial photographers, they talk about how complicated their communication gets with the company, and it's kind of nightmarish to me because it's so disorganized. And I like to be organized and be talking with one person. So yeah.
No, yeah, that's... Oh, I would hate that too because, well, I'm not a very organized person when it comes down to it. But I do like to have some organization. An example, when I'm taking a college class, I like something that's organized.
Yeah.
I want deadlines. I want a specific... I want you to give me something at the beginning of the year that tells me, here is what you're going to do. Here's what I expect.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And I like that. I like to be given something that tells me, you need to accomplish this.
Yes.
Or I like to be able to tell myself I need to accomplish this in this amount of time. But I guess working with a company like that where you have multiple people talking to you about different things, I'd hate that. I guess you just have to get good at it. So about working with people, has it been hard to learn how to work with people in in your business? Is that something you struggle with?
In some ways, yes. I'm technically still homeschooled. I was okay. In some ways, yes. I'm homeschooled. Of course, now I go to the community college. But for a while, you were kind of my only friend, and you were kind of the only person I interacted with. So then once I kind of came out of that shell and discovered that I was actually super extroverted and loved being around people, I kind of just had to learn how to be around people in general. And so that way of learning that kind of translated into the professional photography side of things. And I had to be conscientious, maybe is a better word, about how I was interacting with clients versus friends. And being professional and kind of respectful to the social norms when it came to professional interactions.
There are so many unspoken rules about social interactions, and if you're not born with that ability to really figure those out quickly, well, I can't imagine not being able to judge the tension level in a room like that. I couldn't imagine otherwise. I would be in so many bad situations and I'd be so embarrassed. So yeah, that must be a challenge at some points, but I guess anything you can work through, compensate with different ways of learning. All right. So now we've been going for 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And I got this one big question left. And that's, why did you start your business?
Well, there are lots of reasons. For one thing, money. It's always... I've always kind of been driven to some extent by money, which is because I'm a hard worker, and I like feeling the reward aspect of hard work.
Yeah.
Which is why I was able to save up for a $3,000 camera and continue buying really expensive gear. And so money was part of it, but... more important than that was the experience. I knew then, and I still am pretty dang sure that I want to do photography as a business, like full time, and realized that I need that kind of experience to achieve that. And there isn't a thing as starting too young in that case. So then the other reason is just that I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. I want to have something that I could really, what's the word? Really,
pursue.
Yes, really pursue as a hobby and eventual career, and get good at it, and then work with people. So part of it is like the more here and now personal reasons. Like, I like doing this. I want the experience just because it's good. It pushes me out of my comfort zone. It teaches me how to interact with people.
Yeah.
And then there's also the more future aspect of it. This is going to jumpstart my business. I'm going to have all this information, all these things I learned previously. I'm not going to make as many mistakes, and we'll be able to get off the ground sooner after I'm out of college.
So like personal and professional development.
Yeah.
In that. Okay. Yeah. That's a really good answer to that question.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, I like shooting people the best.
Yep.
Photographing people the best.
Yep.
Which is why I started it around portrait photography. And that's kind of maybe not even the wisest area of genre of photography to choose as a business, because it's really saturated. There are lots of portrait photographers, and there might be more supply than there is demand in that genre than another. There's a lot of demand for photography in lots of areas, also a lot of supply, but I feel like portrait photography is one of the more saturated in the supply aspect.
Yeah, but I think with you starting, what was it, 2 years ago now, or a year ago?
My business probably year and 3/4 ago.
Okay, yeah, you're neat. Organized. Anyhow, I think that'll jumpstart you way beyond what most people are coming in. Like, think about it. Most people I know who are getting into photography are coming out of high school, and they're just getting into college because they took a photography class and they're like, oh, I enjoyed that. I know somebody who took a photography class senior year of college and was like, oh, screw it, I don't like my degree. I want to go back and I want to do photography.
Yeah.
And so, not saying that they can't do that. No, you can work.
Definitely.
You can achieve that, but
you need to work hard, learn fast.
Yeah. But starting younger you can't start too young.
Right. Just like with weightlifting. You've been weightlifting all your life.
Yeah, since I could walk.
You've gotten 6th place at nationals.
Yep. No, yeah, it's I'm just work, dedication, and well, that applies to like anything in life. But yeah, I feel like people that word starting a business is a scary term for people, which is kind of weird. Cause like, I don't know, I thought growing up, the American ideal, start your own business,
Well, it was kind of intimidating in some ways.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a lot about how to do it. And it took a lot of work, a lot of time, which is another reason why you should do it young. You have less school than when you're in college.
Yeah.
More time to do it.
Well, see, yes, it's intimidating, and I definitely agree with that, but it's those who take that leap forward and push themselves to say, you know what, so what if I fail? Worst that can happen is, it doesn't work out. I have to start over, whatever.
In almost every case, you're not going to lose money unless you just decide that your camera is worthless and that you want to get rid of it, trash it, smash it.
Yeah. But like it's and even if you lose money on this endeavor, you're gaining experience. Right. You're
learning from your mistakes.
Yep. I honestly, if I had to redo it, I think I redo buying all my camera equipment. I think the only change I'd make is my first lens would have been a different lens, but that's it. literally.
Yeah, I can't think of anything I'd change. Maybe a different camera than the 80D just because I switched lens lines a little later down, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah. Actually, wouldn't it be nice if Sony had both their lens mounts like Nikon does? They're the same for their APS.
They are.
They are? For their small and...
Yeah, you can put APS-C lenses on Sony full-frame cameras. It'll just crop it down automatically.
Now, that is a fun little fact. You should have gone Sony then.
Yeah.
My dumbass convinced him to go Canon.
Well, it wouldn't have been that bad, except then you switched away from Canon, and the whole point I went Canon was you were Canon.
I know. Yep. All right, so starting a business. I guess my last question will be, what's the hardest thing you ran into when starting a business? What's something that really challenged you?
Specifically starting business, probably getting clients. Even among friends and family, especially since I couldn't drive.
Yeah.
And still can't, thanks to coronavirus. It was kind of hard to get clients, even if there were people who were interested. Maybe the logistics didn't work out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest bit. In terms of actually running the business and doing the professional or personal shoots, like I said, just learning how to work with people, how to post people, etc.
Okay, yeah. Now, businesses require finances. I know I said last question, but this just popped into my head. How do you go about doing your finances? Like that's something that you have to know as a business, and you're really young. Not many young people do finances, but like how's that worked out for you? What have you learned?
Well, my dad is very financially astute, I think would be a good term. And he, from a very young age, he encouraged us to learn how to make money, manage money, etc. So we did chores. Instead of getting an allowance, we did chores, and for the specific chore we did, we got a set amount. Maybe it was $1 for doing the dishes or $1 for doing the trash or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that made me a hard worker, made me a little bit more financially driven, which I think is a good thing. And then he taught us how to manage that money. So he encouraged us to use envelopes. He taught us how to section off some for tithes, some for savings. And so from there, I just kind of voluntarily took it a lot further around the time that I started saving up for a camera and running a business. And now I have a complicated but organized spreadsheet with all my budgeting things. But the only expenses I have had for my business is the gear, which I would have gotten anyway. So I consider that a personal expense.
Yeah.
Actually, I lied, because I did end up paying for a subscription to a website service, so I could do that. But for someone looking to start a business, you don't necessarily have to have any money up front to do it, because there are many, many, many free internet tools, Google Business, Facebook pages, free website hosters, Instagram, etc., that will allow you to promote your business, get the word out, and collect clients, as long as you have a camera to do it with.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to take out a business loan. I would never do that. I would just save up the money to do that. And yeah, you don't need to have expenses in many cases.
Yeah, because I think people are stopped by getting into something like this a little more, like really getting into it as a profession because of the money.
Yeah. But once you start making money, that's when you're going to see more expenses, because especially in an area like photography, you can hire an editor, you can hire an assistant, you can hire a business manager, you can hire all these different people depending on your needs, the amount of money your business is making. But at the start, you don't need to invest that much money into the business as long as you have a camera for the business.
Yeah, well, I got a DM from somebody who's like, yo, I'm an editor. If you want me to edit your footage, I got, I edit with Premiere Pro, After Effects, whatever you want. I can't remember what he said for a price. I don't want to spend that type of money, and I enjoy editing. But that's an expense that is there for many people, editors, especially for video. So now, if your business gets big, what's where do you plan to go with this? Like,
if my business gets big, well, really, I don't want to get too big. I don't want to be one of those photography businesses or studios that has multiple photographers. I want my business to be set aside to be unique from others because of me and my style of shooting, which is the case for a lot of photographers. So if it gets big, I would never hire other photographers to do work or let other photographers be part of the business. Probably same with editors as well. If my business gets big, it probably wouldn't expand much. Maybe get a separate building or space for a studio. Very likely hire an assistant or get an intern to teach and to help me around with
like
shoots
set
and
up
stuff.
lights,
Set up lights, move lights. Present ideas for different poses, different things I could do to make the photos more unique or something. But I don't have any plans for it right now because I'm not even 100% sure if it's what I want to do. So I'm just kind of keeping my options open and seeing what the future presents.
Well, guys, I think that is a great note to end on. Keeping your options open. You know what? There's always something you can do. I know a guy at college who's 76 years old. He spent 20 years in the Army, 30 years at a business, and he's going back for his college degree because he wants to do something new with his life. And so just remember, you always got a chance to do something new with your life. And also remember that there's a Patreon link down below if you want to support the channel and this podcast, if you want to see great content coming out every week. And thank you.
And you forgot to mention, if you have an idea or suggestion or request of an episode we could do, then you can email questions, recommendations, comments, anything that you want to ctwmailbox@gmail.com.
Yep, ctwmailbox@gmail.com, so you can get your ideas in the podcast.
And we could even give you a shout out for that if you want one.
Yep, if you email us, first person to email us will get a shout out, and we will mention their social media
or YouTube channel,
whatever
it is
in the next podcast. So thank you for listening to the end, and we will see you next week.